Hi, everybody. Here we are another Thursday night. I just have an announcement to make. Marlene's mom died this past week. So we've been in and out of looking after things. And next Thursday, we will not have a podcast because of her burial ceremony. So um, be patient with us. We'll get back to things. And what I have here is a couple of questions. Some of these questions are really at the core of some of how the sages have been requesting people function in relationship to their particular personality at a point when they believe that they would like to become more involved in a spiritual quest or spiritual journey. In the West, it's a little bit, let's say, scary because we are tethered to an idea that relates directly to constructing a personality or an ego set or a state that literally searches for value on a personal level so that we can be remembered by others, whoever they may be. And this seems to be consistent in our Western civilization, and not only here in North America, but everywhere. So therefore, we basically lean on material that we learn that other people have been involved with in their spiritual development. And in fact, that is not really spiritual development. That is a kind of historical structure that relates in some way, it does help as an individual has experiences, for example, in this process of spiritual development. But literally, we carry around a knowledge bin and from time to time express it as if we know something, and that makes our ego fluff up a little bit, makes us feel important and valued. And this is the nature of how we've been trained in the West. In the East, of course, it is slightly different, but the Western impact on the East is so profoundly strong, especially in terms of the US and anywhere else that one could use the idea of the concept of being important, which is how we set up our values, so to speak. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how your way of seeing things are. That particular value system, for those who are truly engaged with a deep level or a deeper, let's say, level of spiritual development, is more involved with an experiential orientation. And by the way, that is in the East, and that is also in the West. However, it's very difficult for us to handle our seeker mentality, or a seeker of knowledge, that is, mentality, other than how we have been trained to engage with it. Spiritual growth is very, very, what can I say, slow until you link into another state, and then that other state shifts and changes your personality orientation to a degree. And relative to your capacity to be able to handle it. For example, if you had a very strong personality and you leaned on the fact that you had certain, from your point of view, accomplishments in life, which we all are a part of, and that is your claim to fame, and that you create your whole personality around it, uh, as your parental background or your basic background of friends, whatever, would be proud of you if you succeeded at doing this or that or the other thing, which, by the way, we're trying to do. And but that is wonderful in itself, but it is not a relationship with spiritual growth. And is spiritual growth is attached to a relationship with inner experience. So, and it's not attached to basically talking a whole lot about it unless you're a teacher, and then this begins to be a dilemma. And the teacher must find a balance in that to the best of her or his ability. This is a question from Karl Martin, and why I brought this up. And this question is, she was listening to some old CDs based on Harris Farm in September 9th, I think it's 2019. And I spoke about emotion as a shoot of energy. A shoot is a kind of a slope where things can, you've seen shoots when in children's playgrounds where they run and they go down this little bit of a slide. But the slide I was talking about is not a negative slide; it's more constructive, and neither is a children's slide either. As a shoot for energy to come in, how does that come about? And then she asked, could you talk about the role of emotion in human evolution? Are we still developing it? And I've heard you say that emotion is drama and is intensity. Drama is only one use of emotion. You suggest we calm so that as to allow space to notice ourselves with awareness. Notice ourselves functioning in a day-to-day basis, minute to minute if you can deal with it, but you need a holiday from that stuff. How does this go along with the idea of the shoot? It's a good question. I would appreciate your talking about the spectrum of emotion in us, and I'm not sure why we have it. Well, this is species-wide, and we have a relationship with emotion. As a matter of fact, it's enabled us to survive physically because it's tied strongly to the physical form, as our so-called mental construct is as well. We have a brain, we have a nervous system, we have endocrine gland systems, and through this mechanism, we stimulate chemistry into a blood system, which shoots all the way through our body based on our cardiovascular system, and enables our brain to respond to the environment because it's a sensing system. Emotion is sensing, physical system is sensing. The mind itself is a sensory system as well. However, let's go one at a time. The emotion has been a good part of making sure that the body reacts fast enough in a very dangerous situation, or attempts to be cool enough in any given situation so that we can communicate with each other. And this has happened from the time when we were very tribal, and also probably prior to that when we were just in small little tiny groups, making our way one way or another towards the next animal or plant that we would chew on for our survival. Because as you know, we need food. And we're on an upper part of a food chain. And to be there, we need to in the early days, we needed to react very quickly so that we could survive those forms that were stronger than we were and bigger. We need to be, let's say, reflexively smarter. In other words, figure stuff out so that we could find meat and other foods. Over a period of time, long period of time actually, we begin to cultivate an emotional mind form that remembers what it had done before, so it might try it again if it worked before. And these things seem to accumulate over time, and some of these very threads of awareness still remain in us. We defend very easily, and we defend our personalities, versions of seeing things, and we acutely call them more correct than other people's versions of doing things. And nations, a bunch of people get together and they start agreeing with each other, and they cultivate that. Cities do the same thing, villages, all the rest of it. So this is an emotional, very strong link. Emotion is a strong link between the physical body itself and some form of mental acuity. Memory has long been known to be stimulated strongly when you're hyper aware and you're intensely focused in a given situation which you might find necessary to recall or be involved with an action. If you only think about an action, then you're slower than a person that doesn't think of an action, and they engage with you quicker than you do with your own protection. If you are a little bit smarter, you can let them engage and duck, and if you have practiced doing some of these things, then you become a protective individual. You do that emotionally, you do that physically, and you do that with the equipment that's cultivated through the use of emotion through different circumstances and different contexts. So that's only one thing. Now, you got to remember, we're part of a species, and the whole species is linked together, not just a statement that you make. Every individual has an emotional part of them. Every individual uses that emotion in many different ways. You use your body in many different ways. And the way you think, you engage with what we call kind of thinking. And you have many options that you could choose from, and you choose those options based on how your experience through your particular lifetime has formed you, often through emotional reaction. So when you're looking at emotion and the importance of emotion, I would say that emotion has been very, very important in our development as a species. But it also is a linker. It links all of us together. We have similar reflexes unless we interact with those reflexes and perhaps try to adjust them somewhat, because every situation is not a fear situation. Every situation is not a love situation. our capability to love is based on that which we believe would be effectively helpful to us. It's kind of a sympathetic array of emotion based on how comfortable we feel internally. Well, this idea of a shoot is very fascinating to me. As we are cultivating more and more a kind of mental facility, not only a memorization process, but also an ability to hesitate and watch how we're functioning in our day-to-day. From time to time, we are capable of not necessarily agreeing with how our emotional, mental, physical personality believes that we should be like, because we copy images of everybody and anybody based on what we think might work in our life to our own credit, for example. So what if you hesitate, and this is what the sages have been talking about for thousands of years. This is not new. This is not somebody thought it up. Not like that at all. There is a difference between an emotional, mental perception and a mind perception. I'll try to talk a little bit about that. An emotional mental perception is an alignment with material that validates what you've already considered worthy of validation. It's based on your experience. It's based on how you function, the way you think your style, the way you think you need to be, because it copies all kinds of parental background. Because it was valuable to them, therefore it seemed valuable to us, and we learn that. Whatever is valuable and seems to work, we seem to do again. Later on, as you mature, you begin to see that some of the stuff that you do isn't as valuable as you believe it has been in the past, and perhaps you consider the possibility that you may not entirely agree with how you function. This is a lot more rare than agreeing with how you think you should function to be superior to other people around you. Moving into a mind level is very much an individual project. It is a subtle project. It's one that allows you to begin to understand the level of vulnerability that each and every one of us has. The level of need to be valued that each and every one of us has. The level of misunderstanding that we often are a part of. The level of, well, let's say the numbers of options to choose from when you're engaging with others in relationship to a discussion or just interacting, period. The sages knew this. This is clearly, it's even written about, I'm sure of that. I don't have a problem with that one. They knew that if you could begin to observe you with respect, with kindness, in a kind of gentle ease, trying to understand and be okay with and not okay with how you actually engage in life, and from time to time, make small adjustments. You then are adjusting the deep links that you have reflexively, emotionally, and dare I say, mentally, because what goes on in your brain usually agrees with how you have made up your minds very quickly. In fact, that is an aspect of emotion on kind of a mental level of a flow of force that we call emotion, that we use consistently. We often call some of that will, my will, blah, 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 blah. It's really your determination to align with how you believe things need to be for you to be the way you think you need to be, relative to your vision of you. Often, most people don't even see that particular vision that they've set in play. But that's all right. The images that the sages thought would be helpful is that there is a deep level, an even deeper level of wisdom that occurs in everyone that is akin to loving. I'd agree. It's akin to loving, but it's really difficult for us to link up with it because of our determination to respond directly towards the images that we don't even, or that we believe we think are there so that we'll be respected by other people and understood by other people. And perhaps other people will align with us because we have this idea or that idea. Each individual sage knew directly that they could see themselves interacting from a plane one would call mind. Many people do call it that. Not even sure if that's the right name, but that we could use, But there is a place within us that can be cultivated so that we can watch and see, not 100% of the time, because we're not there yet. Nor do we want to be. Most people on the planet want to be just exactly the way they are, and they'll fight to remain that way, and that's the way it should be, because that's where we are right now. But Carol's talking about spiritual development. So when you're looking at that, you're looking at it and you're attempting not to be negative, not to be aggressive, but to be more kindly. To look at it as if perhaps this is a result of our previous years and their interaction, but also that it's okay, all these tangled webs of engagement that we come up with. They're okay because that's all we could do at the time. Even today, you can only do what you'll allow yourself to even consider doing as a valued way of operation. And you'll still have doubts about that. You'll still have frustrations about, I wish I should have said this, I could have said that, all the rest of the stuff that goes with it. But in that particular moment, as in this very moment right now, in my expression of what I'm attempting to say, there are always better words. Now, in our versions of emotional dispositional structures, a person may be listening to this in, let's say, Venezuela, and says, I could have said that better. So that lifts that person up in the eyes of himself, makes him feel valued, makes everyone else in his mind or her mind think that there's something special about them because they could do that. This is the nature of an emotional engagement that links us all together, but it's a physical engagement as well. And it's a constructing mental facility. And then the link with mind can be cultivated through the watching and the understanding and the willingness to repair and the willingness to recognize you're not going to get it perfect. There's no such thing. You will always have an aspect within you that evaluates based on an image, a past experience, a reaction, a need to do that so that you will feel even uncomfortably comforted by how you function. You can do that. There's no rule that says you can't do that. But also you can take another look and move a tiny little bit. This is not comfortable. The sages knew this, but it cultivates a link with mind or a higher stage of engagement with the emotional, mental, physical function of a personality that will always move back ever so slightly into wanting to be how they were before, even with change, even with adaptation, even with considering something else, other than what it already conceives and protects and wishes never would change, because suddenly within minutes and moments, you have an elevated feeling in there about how that, whatever it was valuable. Sages knew this to be true. But they knew also one other thing. If you make one small change in you, through looking and honestly considering it may be helpful, they knew one thing. They knew you would eventually try to get back into the previous way of being. And the second thing they knew, it would change you. But here is this but. It would also change someone elsewhere linked in the species in a similar way. They had, in other words, they had grown up in a way that's not the same, but similar. And that shift in you would affect that other person, even if they were 15,000 miles away. It's always hard to swallow that one. So don't swallow it. Think about it. These are sages. And they were definitely, in my opinion, real. And it was true that that can occur. Certainly I've experienced this from my point of view, where in giving a talk, one time I was about to say 4 or 5 words that might have been a part of my personality 40 years ago. And all of a sudden in my mind was an expression that was much more genteel, respectful, and considerate. And I thought, wow, very fortunate to have this happen. I expressed those words and I was grateful for them. Meaning, I was able in that moment to recognize that there was an important, not right, not wrong, not good, not bad, just another option other than the one that my emotional mind would have considered valuable based on my experience. This is a small thing. I'm just another person talking here, but if you catch this in yourself even once, please don't forget it. Remember it. There is an energy flow that can operate through every part of you that you have made peace with into parts of other people that are similar to where you hadn't made peace with them, and it will help them to begin to make peace with themselves. It sounds a little strange, but if you begin to think about it, you begin to make sense of it. Now, here's the other dilemma. As soon as it starts, if it begins to happen intermittently, because you wouldn't want it to happen all the time, you would be thinking that your whole personality was being attacked somehow, because it wouldn't be perfectly the way you believe yours is, in a comforting manner. No offense, but it's just how it tends to work. Because we keep, no matter what we think, how many changes we go through, there's an aspect of our personality that keeps wanting to get back into being the same as it was before. It's reflexive. It's emotional, fine. It's also energetic in terms of the relationship that you have with how you constructed yourself. It's a love bond. You constructed yourself in a loving manner because it relates to helping you to be seen in an image that is valuable from your perspective. And this happened from the time of your birth. Unconsciously reflexive so fast it's not funny for many years. And if you allow yourself to begin, then you won't have to go to other people. You won't have to tell anybody else, unless you're going to teach, of course. You won't have to tell anybody else about the great progress you've made. You'll see it, and you won't need as much encouragement. You'll need some, but your encouragement will be coming from your cultivation of a kind of a lens within you where you can see that you're helping little by little, and you're being helped little by little. You'll notice these small, little, tiny things. Big things, fine. But the small, little things touch together, blend together, enable you to recognize that despite your vulnerability as a growing being, as a person who faces the world every day and attempts to keep that facing in exactly the same way that it was yesterday. Because yesterday you had a big deal and you were okay and you were fine, but today, blah, 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 blah. There's no competition in this spiritual growth at all. It's a matter of helping. Learn how to help. And then you'll be preparing to be helpful to others. You won't have to put a sign on your chest or a placard or tell anyone. But anyone who meets you who's doing the same thing will know you on sight. Prior to that, you will need the placard. You'll need to show other people. You'll have this need because you're so vulnerable. Be vulnerable, but be kind to yourself and respectful. There's no need, you don't have to negate. Recognize, try to understand, continue internally the best you possibly can. And see how you do that. And be okay with you. But recognize your relationship with emotion is self-valuing so that you can get through and handle your days with others, around others, in view of others. It's a dilemma. All kinds of people around you will not be doing that. It takes a lot of courage to do that. More courage than most people have. But everybody has some courage. How they use it is only based on how they can function internally. And for many of us, internal growing can happen only in small increments, while thinking we can handle anything. Well, good. Continue. You'll get your opportunity to handle as much as you can handle. And that handling is not about any kind of negativity at all. It's about beginning to perceive and understand beyond what you could yesterday. No negation is attached to it. However, we're trained to think that that may be true. Our negation part, it's a conundrum for us. But think about the highest possible engagement with something way beyond our understanding. Would you like that beingness to be harsh when it understands everything about how we are? I would propose that it would probably like us to be like it, understanding everything deeper than what we can, slowly, so that we can continue, as opposed to harshly, so that we lose faith, lose a willingness to continue. I'm not sure if I covered everything. I wrote all kinds of notes, but I think the biggest thing about this shoot business is the link up that we might have. I'll try to read what I said, and forgive me if I haven't written it too well. We have a link to others who have similar renderings of self-interest images, self-experience, reaction practices, as the emotional and mental quiets to some degree. That's your intellectual mind. That keeps pretty busy in most of us. It allows healing or higher state energy to follow down through the links, the areas that, if someone was grumbly with their sister, their brother, blah, 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 blah. And it really hurt them. And they tried to make amends and they couldn't make amends. Just thinking. And so then, but they asked for help for them. They tried to be kind and respectful as opposed to being angry and disrespectful just because there's no recovery of at least reasonableness between them. That energy can move in and through to help that other person. If that other person needs to be, let's say 700 miles away, or whatever, needs to be helped there so that they can go forward in their internal relationship with themselves. That would be helpful. Let's see where to go. Follow down through our links that are similar to others. In others, because you have attempted and are attempting to see a help within yourself, your personal strands of emotion and how you use them, your verbal expression and thought processes. I read a lot here. And you're attempting to try and help yourself can show up in the helping of others in that they have a sense within themselves that there's an option other than the one that they've been leaning on all their life. And they begin to move towards that option a little bit more. And so they begin to learn to act slightly differently than they could before. Not that they just couldn't before. So it's not a negative thing. It may appear negative, but it's just they couldn't do it. It was not possible. And now they're beginning to be able to do it. They begin to learn beyond their reflex, their emotional reflex of life, and change occurs as if they are helping themselves, but they are in reality are helped by your shift past your automatic responses. And you may not even know you have them until you do. And then that's when it helps. This also leads towards the seeing of you better as fact, not to be negated or applauded, just recognized. And it becomes an early aspect of realization that is often discussed by so many people intellectually. This has been experientially. You begin to realize that this can be something that may be helpful as you move forward as well, because there's often a lot of stuff there. But you're not trying to be a perfect personality. You're trying to make room for a deeper understanding so that energy that used to go into you repeating all of this previous stuff now begins to go into you being slightly different than you were before. And this is a blend. There's a blending and a shifting of energy towards others that are attached to you. This is quite amazing, actually. There is an old tradition in the East that is not very well understood by most people. They always say, don't have attachments. And what they mean by that is very different than what we think. What they mean is begin to work on your attachments to your own self-interest. Make your love broader so that you can begin, you do not have an attachment to the helping of others. Those who are attached to you, not your friends, not even your enemies, they're attached to you too. But those who are similar in the species will be affected by you in your open development Therefore, your attachment to them begins to be less in one manner, and engaging with this species, whole species, in another. Now, this is kind of a little stretch in our thinking, because we often say, "Oh, we're all attached," like it means something. No, it really does mean something. There is an attachment through how you live your life, how others think, how you think, how you engage with yourself. The difficulty with that is that their attachment, similar to yours, affects you, and you remain attached to how you function in relationship to you. This is for all of us. We all are like this, right down to the yogis and spiritual folks. They are moving towards a level where their personality is a tool for a higher state to be helpful to the species, because they're attached, linked in an old manner. So it walks in deep down to an old personality trait to help the roots of the species to become more able to know itself and to be gentle with itself and respectful. Because remember, those higher states are related to loving, not related to power orientations that as soon as you do that, you become king of the world and all that kind of thing. That's what we do. We do that all the time. You know, presidents and all the rest of it, and chieftains and blah, 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 blah. It happens all the time. And everybody's trying to get into those positions. It doesn't make any sense, except to us. We're still virtually tribal. We're still very young. That doesn't mean we're negative. That doesn't mean it's bad. It means, my God, this is where we are. And it's okay. Can we move forward? I think so. Bit by bit. Don't be afraid of increments of growth. They're clearly movement and very valuable, not only to us, but to others. So I also said, if discussed with others, and you start bragging about all this kind of stuff, then the pride pushes the older previous aspects to the surface, makes you feel fluffy and great about yourself, and you've forgotten the relationship with a deeper level. You're falling in love with the entrancement that you have with yourself. Is it okay? I guess, but it's really hard to see. Probably the most difficult thing to see. I suggest turning the hands on. Now, the reason why I turn the hands on, turning the hands on changes the level of engagement that the hands have. Therefore, it makes it easier for those higher states to operate through the hands. If you are all ticklish about how important your hands are versus other people's hands, it's your personality stuff that you're dealing with again. Try and step back, asking for help for yourself in those places where it's most difficult for you to be helpful, to be encouraging to yourself. And you're in that kind of way, I guess you're asking for transmutation, shift, healing in a kind of a way. But I always say in a gentle, balanced, and appropriate a manner as possible. All this becomes just words until the first experience you have, when you can actually perceive that occurring and you're not in charge of it. It's a bit disconcerting, but if you just calm down, you get over the disconcerting very quickly and just you start realizing, my goodness, am I ever glad that's happening? I don't know what's happening, but I'm sure glad it's happening. That stimulates you also. We have another thing that's really hard for us. You're the captain of your own ship, and no one's going to tell you what to do and why to do it that way. And that's why spiritual growth is kind of difficult. You get a bunch of people who agree with you. That can happen. And then your way is just what it is. Make it your experience. Go slow. Have the experience. Know it's real. At higher states, people team together. They don't go separate from one another. You can have 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 people who are really able. No one will ever find out because they're too busy trying to be helpful to others who are attempting to grow so that it can be more that can be helpful. That is profoundly compassionate, profoundly wise and loving, and the more that can be like that, the more that can be helpful, the more perhaps some of the roots that we have in our species can be gentled, and we can become more respectful with each other. See, asking, okay, all right. Remembering, of course, that we're not, it's the higher state that is doing the work. How are we doing for time? Marlene?
You have 8 minutes.
8 minutes, okay. I hope that helps, Carol. It certainly helps me to do it, to try and talk about it. This is a question from Mark Burnham, and in Ontario here, Brantford. And he says, why is it that when we seem to forget to meditate, he can be meditating every single day, and then a week goes by and he hasn't meditated at all, and he notices that, and it's shocking to him. But this is quite normal. What occurs is, as I was saying before, we develop in increments. After you get over the idea that you're great because you meditate and all the rest of this stuff, it becomes a part of your life. And when you do meditate, there is an incremental growth internally. You're not worried about you and your meditation. You're concerned about that incremental growth. Your personality, that emotional, mental, physical aspect of you, is being helped to become more porous and just a slight bit less related to the protective nature that we all have, or our relationship as it stands currently, that we call us. And it attempts to help us to be a little bit more porous so that we can link up with a higher state. If you have a link, or you become just a little bit more, let's say, porous, I use that word, then what will occur is the personality will automatically, reflexively engage with you. It's just personality is only energy. It's only aspects of the physical, emotional, and that emotional, mental aspect. And it will try to protect the remnants of you being as you were yesterday. It will do that over and over again. And suddenly, it becomes a little bit more comfortable, and you notice that you haven't meditated for a while. There'll be other times when you notice you haven't meditated and you don't want to. I don't want to do that. I just don't want to do. I've done meditation for so many years, and this has not happened. That's just an indicator that I should not, go on and on and on about how you should meditate. In fact, all those many years has got you to a point where increments can occur, and when they do, protective nature of these planes comes up strongly. Meditation in itself, if it makes you more able to handle a flow of energy, it affects others who are right at the edge of becoming more able to handle more energy. And therefore, it's a big deal. It's not about you being the big deal. That's just something we tell ourselves, because if we don't do that, somehow there's something wrong with us. It's about the ability to engage with that physically. And many people work with their physical form being able to handle this. And this is not so simple. The root center comes on, especially the root and gonad center, and a part of the emotional disposition comes on and tries to flood through to the top of the head. And that engagement not only helps them, but it helps others, but it stimulates the personality. And the personality can go off on a tangent with respect to how important it is and how valuable they are, and they are this and that. It's not uncommon. So it's not negative. It's something that can happen. The same as in Mark's situation. These things have happened for years. One of the biggest problems with being in an ashram in the past is being like thousands of people in, let's say, an ashram in India, and they're all focused on being great meditators. Becomes a personality trait. Has nothing to do with inner growth. Becomes they can hold their position, they can be in that position, they can engage this way. Others have done exactly the same thing, had nothing to do with that particular kind of need to boost the personality, and have broken through so that energy can operate through them to help another. And this does happen as well. Seeing both sides of that fence and a whole bunch in the middle is kind of helpful, because you understand where you were that second. Another second, you may not be there at all. And another second, you're somewhere else. But often, the reflexes that we have inside ourselves, they are self-protective. And that is how we stay alive. So if you hear negation in that, your hearing is focused on a self-protective note, because this is not about negation of the meditation or a person that has this happen. This is a normal thing that can happen. So there are fuzzy times. Happy, happy, happy. I've been able to do this for a long time, blah, 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 blah. And there are legitimate reflexive times when I don't want to do this. I'll do it if I have to, but nobody's going to tell me what to do, because it's going to change me. And how is it going to change me? And if it does change me, what am I going to look like? And oh my God, I don't want to go through this kind of blah, 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 blah. That is a real strong defense about growing past what you already believe is valuable as an individual in this species, on this planet, at this time. No negations involved with that. That's just how things are. So I said really similar things. The reflex internally to protect the ego states that enable you to live and survive as a valuable person are right there. It takes a moment or so for the personality to accept and blend with the development internally. The personality or the personal purpose to grow must bring you back. It has to bring you back because it needs to be valued by you. If you're proud of this capacity to meditate, and your meditation pride goes to your building up of your own personal importance, not letting go, to deepen level of developments, so that you can begin ultimately to know that the process of growth is slow. And it's not about one group versus another. It's not about one statement versus another. It's about a willingness to go beyond where you were before and be okay with you, and okay with others who are attempting to do the same thing, no matter what their belief system is, no matter where they are, no matter who they are. There's no gender relationship with this, no color bars, nothing of this nature. It's all, I hate to say it out loud, it's all about the way we protect ourselves and our particular second or moment of life that we live in. I really wish you all well. I believe next Thursday, we will not have a talk, of course, for obvious reasons, but we will get back as soon as we possibly can. And the following week we'll have a Thursday night, plus we have a seminar. I hope everybody remembers to send questions in. These are wondrous, and and don't forget to register, as Marlene just reminded me. And I wish you all well. Please take care. We'll now meditate for about roughly an hour.
Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio, et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Et salutare Tua nobis. Domine exaltioratione meo, et clamor meus aseveria. Dominus Manus, et cum spiritus tuo, et cum spiritus tuo. Asperges Spiritui Sancto. Sicut ad principio, et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. cum principium in die virtutis quae, in splendoribus sancta, Exus ante Luciferum genus, Exit non in omera, sede alexis mem, non ecora inimicos tuos, salve pelum tuum. Dominus dixit ante, Filius Deus est, gloria Genuis, Salvos magnos Domine Deus noster, et congregados de nationibus, ut confite amor nomini sancto tuo, et glorie glorificare tuo. O Domine Pater noster, et Redemptor noster, a saeculum lodem tuum. Laudem Domini loquetur nostra, et benedicos vobis nomen sanctum Deus. Ec principium in die virtutis quae, in splendoribus sancta, Exus ante Luciferum genus, Exit non in omera, sede alexis mem, non ecora inimicos tuos, salve pelum tuum. Alleluia. Autorem Cieli et Terrae, visibilium Domini, et invisibili, et in unum Domini, Iesum Christum, Filium Dei unigenit, et ex Patre Natum, ante omnia sed, Deum et Deum, et Deum, Deum substantialem et quam omnia facta sum, qui protegas omnes, et protegas cum salus, descendite et incarnatus Spiritus Sanctus, ex Maria Virgine, et homo factus Lucini Filii successiam pronomis, Substantium Pilate, Asus et Sepulcrus, et resurrectites ea die, fecundum Scripturas, et ascendit in caelum, sed et ad exteram part, et iterum venturus est cum gloria, iudicam et vivos et mortuos, cuius regni non edifi, et in Spiritum Sanctum Domini, et vivificantem, qui ex Patre Filio precoce, qui cum Patre et Filio simul adoratum, et quam glorificatum, qui locutus est prophet, et unam sanctam Catholicum, et apostolicam ecclesiam, confiteor unum baptismum, in remissionem peccatorum, et expecto resurrectionem mortuum, et viis Yes, Lord Jesus, Jesus, Cancela coliscaria, sed sublime omnia. Eius sucis presentia. Nil canitus tuavium, nil auditur lucundium, nil cogitatur lucium, quam Iesus Dei Filius. Nil canitus suavius, nil auditur lucundius, nil cogitatur lucium, quam Iesus Dei Filius. Iesus es veni, quam Deus es petendimus, quam manus sequerendimus, sed qui in melientimus. Iesus es benedictus, quam Deus es benedictus.
And now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding on your own. Good night, everybody.